Hello. So I'm going to get straight into it. So I want to talk about asking for guidance. And what does this mean? So asking for guidance. Um, if you're on a serious spiritual path, or you have a serious spiritual practice, I do a course in miracles myself. But it doesn't have to be a course in miracles. It can be another serious spiritual practice. You will know that when you ask for guidance, it's actually you're asking for guidance from within ourselves. It is within us. We're not reaching out for anything outside of us. It is aspects of ourselves that we are asking for guidance from. So you can call this the higher self, you can call this the Christ self, um, you can call it by the names of certain deities or goddesses, um, or you can call it the Holy Spirit, which is used in A Course in Miracles. But that can also really what the Holy Spirit is. I mean, we're used to this idea, this Christian idea of it being something that's almost outside, but it's actually an inner guide. So you can call it Holy Spirit, you can call it inner spirit, inner guide. You know what I mean. So, um, so we often try to figure things out. I know myself that I often try to figure things out in my small separated mind, meaning in any situation in life. So whether it's work or relationships, we often just try to figure things out ourselves, and we think we're going to get somewhere. And sure, we can move some things around, we can shift, we can't shift, we can move some things around, shuffle some things around physically. We can do that. We might have some fun doing that, who knows, but it's not going to create any real shifts. So really asking for guidance is in every situation when we're not at peace, when we feel any kind of worry, anxiety, um, any kind of fear, that we need to give that to spirit, to our inner guidance, which is spirit, and ask for guidance. So how do we then know that what we get, the answer that we get, whether that's the ego or spirit? Well, in A Course in Miracles, it says the ego speaks first and the ego speaks loudest. So we're often going to get the ego answers first. That's going to be what we're used to hearing. But really, how we know the difference is, am I at peace? If we feel at peace, or if we don't feel at peace, then we didn't really get the answer or the right answer. If we do feel at peace, then the answer or what the guidance that we get is coming from the right place. So this is obviously, this can be applied for a lot of different situations, but especially, and maybe the hardest situation that this needs to be applied to is in relationships, whether it's, well, personal relationships, so whether it's with several other people, whether it's with someone we know really well, or people that we've just met. And radical forgiveness really means that we need to ask for guidance in those situations when our buttons are pushed to the extent that we know we are in our insane minds. We cannot see the innocence in the other person. And I think you know what I mean. I definitely know how that feels. We can be at a stage when we know that we are in our ego minds, and that we know the thoughts we're thinking and the things we might want to say, and that we might even say in certain situations, that is not coming from our true selves, that we should really just remove ourselves from the situation and try to gather our thoughts, or ask for some kind of guidance. And the hardest thing, what we need to do when we're in those moments of feeling like I am insane right now, I know I'm insane, I know I cannot see past the perceived mistakes that this person or these people are committing. And they might be wrong, but in A Course in Miracles it says, our job is to tell our brother that he is right even when he's wrong. Not meaning that we have to appease people or tell them that, or not point out things that they need to know or that they might need to know. But we should come, it's an energetic level that this comes from. We should, if we are in a moment when we cannot express ourselves without blaming and throwing guilt at the other person, then we should remove ourselves from the conversation and from the situation in the moment. And then we should come back to the point where we can see the innocence in the other person, which is their true selves, and come back. And then we might realize that actually this was not such an issue that I seemed to make of it in the moment, and I don't really have to bring this up again. Or we might feel that there's something that needs to be brought up that the other person needs to know, and that we can then come back to them and speak from a place of affirming their true innocence while still in a helpful way point out how they might have acted wrongly on an earthly level. But really what we need to do before any of that happens is to sit down. If we're able to sit down quietly, by ourselves somewhere, and if we can close our eyes in a kind of meditative, be in a meditative state, and we need to say something along the lines of whatever wording you want to choose, along the lines of, I know I'm insane at the moment. I cannot, in my own small self, I cannot see the innocence in this person. I'm blaming. I'm in the mindset of guilt and blame. And take this from me. Take this from me, because the wording in A Course in Miracles is along the lines of, I am not at peace, so I must have chosen wrongly. I want to be at peace, so I want to choose again. I'm willing to choose again. I'm willing to see this differently. I'm willing to see this differently. Repeat as much as you need to, even if we don't feel it yet. We need to repeat and affirm that, and even visualize the person in front of you. Visualize them in their higher self, whether it's visualizing their actual, how they look physically, or just have that feeling of how you know their higher self is, or just visualizing having a thought of them as innocent, throwing love towards them. So this is when we get to the next stage. At first you just have to be willing to see this differently, because we can't be throwing love, or we can't be seeing their innocence. We can't fake it. This is not to be faked. This is not some fluffy. That's why, spirituality, and I often find now might sound like I'm in a bit of a rant, a bit of a Kalima rant, but it's not fluffy. It's not cute. It should be fluffy and cute. When we are enlightened masters, then yes, everything should be fluffy and cute, and okay, maybe not, everything should be rainbows and fairies and joy, And we are in those moments sometimes. I mean, I know we all have those moments. They might be fleeting, but we have those moments. But you know, this is not fluffy and cute. This is hard. This is fucking hard. Especially knowing that we need to see someone's innocence when everything, our ego is screaming that someone is guilty or that someone is wrong. And on an earthly level, they might be wrong. On an earthly level, they might be wrong. But the spiritual path is to elevate ourselves above the earthly level. Accept that we have our limitations. We have we slip into our earthly limitations, and then take that and having a willingness to see it differently and elevate ourselves above that. And that's really hard. That's why it's called radical forgiveness. It's not some fluffy. It's not just, oh yeah, I forgive you because I'm spiritual, and then we still hold it against them, or we bring it up later on. We bring mistakes up later on, and we have the energy of defensiveness or attack kind of surrounding us continuously. No, it's radical forgiveness. It's seeing the person or the people as they really are, because that's the only way that we can see ourselves as we really are. That's the only way we can see ourselves as innocent and guiltless, and be in our true selves, which is love, which is peace. So this is an inner shift. This is not something that can be it's not something that can be faked, because this is energetic rather than, it's more energetic than saying something out loud. We can say to someone that we forgive them, or that they're right, or just to keep the peace, so to speak. But that's not really real peace. That's appeasing someone's ego, really, or appeasing. It's not true peace. So, you know, this is something we have to do if we are serious, and it's really hard. But you know, removing ourselves. I'm quite tired of this. Often in spiritual circles, things I see online, and certain, you know, sometimes posted online, it can sound a bit good and a bit trendy. This thing of remove toxic people from your life. You know, you sometimes see these little pop-ups, or these little people posting things about remove toxic people. I'm not going to be around toxic people anymore. I'm spiritual now. I want to be high and elevated, so I'm going to remove toxic people. First of all, people are not toxic. Habits and patterns in relationship between people can appear toxic. I mean, toxic is just a word. It's obviously a expression for something. It might not be very correct, but toxic, it can feel toxic, meaning we are not at peace. There's anxiety, there's conflict, there's maybe codependence, whatever it might be. But people are not toxic. As long as we think people are toxic, we are not going to be at peace, because if we think we need to push away so-called toxic people, I'm not going to have this anymore. I'm spiritual and you're not spiritual, so I'm not going to have your behavior anymore, so I'm going to push you away, and then I'll be at peace. No. I'm sorry, that's not going to happen. You know, I love you and everything, but that's not going to happen, because what's going to happen is someone else will come along and they're going to push exactly the same buttons. In fact, they might push more buttons, and they might push them even harder, because that's how it works. That's how we grow. We didn't get the lesson in the first instance, so we're going to get the lesson even harder the second time, and the third time, and the fourth time if we don't get it after one 1 or 2 rounds. So that's not going to work. So there's no way around it. We need to sit down and affirm innocence, affirm the innocence, affirm the higher self, affirm the love, affirm the unconditional love for other people. That doesn't mean we have to have them in a close relationship, or we have to have them in a certain type of relationship. But if we try to change the form of the relationship before we have practiced the radical forgiveness, and thinking that changing the form of the relationship is going to get us to the peace that we want, then we're guided wrongly, basically, or we're guided by our egos, which meaning small separated self. So when I talk about ego, I'm not talking about identity or preferences. I'm talking about what the A Course in Miracles means by ego, which is the small separated self, meaning where we don't feel at one with other people, where we don't feel at peace, where we feel separate. Yeah, so it's going to replay itself until we get the lesson. So there's no way around it. We might as well early on sit down and do this work, which is really hard. It's not fluffy. It's but the rewards can be amazing if we actually do this work continuously. So I'm not done. Far from it, but I do know that when I do this, it works. It works in the moment, and you have to do it over and over again. It's going to come up again, and you have to do it again. But it's how we need to go about it. Well, asking for guidance, that's what I started with, but specifically when it comes to interpersonal relations, we need to sit down and realize I can't be doing this myself, or figuring out how to deal with this situation or this person. I can't let my ego drive this situation, because it's just not going to work. So anyway, I'm not meaning to be negative at all, but I am just saying that, this is hard work. It's simple in theory. It's very simple in theory. It's, principles of A Course in Miracles, which is really just one expression of universal spiritual truths. It's very simple in theory, and when we're in our peaceful selves, when we sit down, have a meditation and a cup of tea, and we're not in any conflict, it seems simple enough. But it's when we're in these situations where these ego drives come up, and this guilt and blame, that's when the real work comes in. That's what we need. That's why we even practice these books, these principles, and read books like A Course in Miracles. It doesn't have to be A Course in Miracles. It can be something else. But that's when we really need to practice it. Hope to see you soon again. Thank you.